All right, thank you. So really quick before I start, I want to give a really big shout out. CactusCon is my favorite event of the year. So big thanks to everybody who puts this on. I know it takes a lot of work, and thank you for inviting me. I'm super excited to be here. So I'm going to be talking today about malware, incident response, and disaster recovery, but I'm going to step into the forest and look at the trees of it and handle it from a personal perspective because this is a very personal topic for me because I was hacked. And the kind of fallout of that, the recovery of that, it took a lot of time and a lot of effort. And throughout all of it, I kept saying to myself, man, I wish I had thought about this before. And the more I've shared my story, the more I've heard from people in the industry and my peers that this isn't uncommon because it doesn't matter how good of a security engineer you are, it can happen, right? It's much more of a question of when it's going to happen than if. So really quickly about me, yep, my name's Robert Meylor. I'm a security engineer here in the Valley. That is a picture of me from my vacation last year in Florida. The sun does wonders for me out there. But I've been working in infrastructure and security for about 5-6 years across a few different companies that you may or may not have heard of. And I got into all of this because at the end of the day, I am a nerd. I like playing video games, I like working with computers, and eventually I started helping people with computers and helping them build computers, and then I ended up working on infrastructure and then somehow made my way up on stage here. Now, I'm sharing all of this with you because that's where this has many mistakes in my life start, which is with gaming. About probably 8-9 months ago, this really neat game called Peak came out. If you're not a gamer, you haven't heard of it, it is an online multiplayer game that you can play with your friends where you play as a Boy Scout who's crash landed on an island, and the only way that you can get out is by climbing up to the very top of the peak of a mountain and setting off an SOS flare in hopes that you can get rescued. This is a great game, but it has one limitation, which is that you can only play with 4 players. And despite what it might look like, I have more than 3 friends. So when me and my friends would get online to play together, we couldn't all play in the same lobby, and so we wanted a way around that. So we turned to the world of modding. Modding and gaming is where developers will go out and create add-ons to games and publish them online so people can download them and use them. That inherently, to any security person, is going to sound a little bit sketchy, but there's been a big push in the gaming community over the past decade or so to make this accessible and safe. And one of the big ways that they've done that is through this platform called Nexus Mod. It's a platform where you can publish mods, you can look at uploaders, uploader history, they will scan all mods for malware and make sure that they're safe. Then you can look at reviews on there. So when we wanted a mod, we went and we found a reputable one on Nexus Mod that had tens of thousands of installs. I knew people that downloaded it and used it. It came back safe. It looked on there. It was marked safe from the malware scan. And so I bookmarked it. I got off my computer for the day. I went to work. I came back, and then I got on my computer to play with my friends. I downloaded the mod. I scanned it with Windows Defender. I installed it, scanned it again with Windows Defender, launched the game, went downstairs, got a drink, and by the time that I came back upstairs, a browser had launched on my computer, opened up my PayPal account, transferred thousands of dollars out of my bank account to somebody I had never heard of, and my phone was going off and buzzing, right? I immediately knew what happened, unplugged everything, and then I started 3 work streams in parallel. First, I wanted to reduce the blast radius of what had just happened to make sure that nothing else would occur, right? I lost money, didn't know what was going to happen, but I wanted to make sure I didn't lose any more money or nothing else happens to me. 2, I wanted to try and recover that money. Obviously, it was a lot of money for me. It happened at a kind of vulnerable point in my life. So I wanted to get that back. And then 3, I wanted to understand what happened. So 1, it didn't happen again. But 2, I could understand the radius of what was being attacked so that I could contain it a little bit better. I'm going to start with that first part so we can understand the attack and then go through the other steps here really quick. So first, how did they get into my PayPal account? I'm a security engineer. I should have 2FA, right? Well, it was 2 parts here because I did have MFA on my account. And the first part is auto-suggest. If you've ever used Chrome before, you've probably gone to fill something out online and it will suggest what you would normally fill out. This is part of their autofill feature, but it isn't a password manager feature. It will just happen no matter what unless you disable it. And what Google did is it auto-suggested the correct email to log into PayPal. So they had my username. They didn't need to figure it out. I didn't have it saved in the password manager. It just auto-filled that email. The next part of this is what really confused me. I had a passkey on my computer, right? I prefer that over a password, but I still had 2 MFA. But that didn't go off. I never got a prompt. And the reason is because for some reason, for PayPal, they trusted that IP address that traffic was coming from. They'd seen traffic there before from that computer with that passkey on that account, so they automatically trusted the website. I didn't trust that website on my browser because when I deleted the passkey in the process of this and I went to log in with my password to reset the password, it asked me to trust the website. And so despite the fact I didn't do anything there, they were able to bypass my MFA, get into my PayPal account, and then transfer money out. So that makes sense, but how did they get in the first place? I scanned it with Windows Defender twice, and they still were able to do something. And on top of that, the mod seemed safe. I knew people that had downloaded it. It looked on Nexus Mod like it was safe, but the reality is in the 24 hours between me finding the mod and bookmarking it and downloading it, the uploader changed. Anybody who's ever worked on any sort of software probably won't find that super odd. Uploaders change all the time as people iterate on new versions, but the uploader that uploaded this new version and had been added onto this mod within about 4 hours of me downloading it. And on top of that, they had been added onto a dozen other mods, all owned by the same original uploader. So it was very apparent that this original uploader had been compromised. They then used that account to invite somebody else on there. That person uploaded a malicious version of the mod. And then, along with that, Windows Defender, I've been told, literally since the day I picked up a computer, that it is good enough for 99% of users. But as we're seeing the modern day landscape evolve, the reality is that it isn't. I, in this process, downloaded a free version of Malwarebytes, plugged it into my computer, scanned it, and it detected it within seconds, right? So with understanding that, the very first thing that I did after all of this happened, and I kind of understood what happened, is I reached out to my team at work. I was a security engineer, and as much as it sucked that money went out of my account, I wanted to make sure that money would go back into it. I didn't want to get fired, right? So I reached out to my team and I said, hey, I got hacked, right? A very humbling experience to tell a bunch of people I respected that I had made a mistake, but it was a very good exercise. In fact, one of my peers the next day brought me a USB drive so that I could reformat my computer because the only other USB drive I had malware on it now. And then after I did that, I started resetting 15 years worth of passwords, which if you've ever had to do, sucks. I was up until about 2 a.m. doing this. And then along with that, I'm a very big proponent of the phrase of never letting our crisis go to waste. And so while I was doing this, I actually migrated password managers because the one that I was using at that time was susceptible to a bunch of attacks. I wasn't sure in that moment if they had gotten any of my passwords downloaded from my password manager. Afterwards, I was able to figure out that they didn't. But I wanted to prevent anything from happening like that in the future because this could have been a lot worse for me, right? So I understood what happened. I started to reduce that blast radius. I'd reached out to people. I'd reset all my passwords. I was able to kind of sleep at night, but the question of recovery still remained. Was I going to be able to get that money back? The very first thing that I did was I reached out to PayPal. Within 5 minutes of this transaction happening, I had submitted multiple fraud cases through the app. But I always like talking to people, so I called them up on the phone and I said, hey, here's what happened. I just got hacked. I downloaded some malware accidentally. They got access. So they logged onto my computer and sent money to themselves from my computer. So all this traffic's going to come from me. I just want to let you know, but this wasn't me. They were awesome on the phone, super receptive, told me that they would get back to me as soon as possible. They had to escalate it to their tier 2 team. I said, got it. Thank you so much. And then while I'm resetting passwords, about an hour later, I get an email back saying, hey, this wasn't fraud. It came from your IP address. I said, okay, yeah. I called back, hey guys, I know it came from my IP address. Can we please reopen this fraud case because like this is my money and I would really like it back. They said, awesome, yeah, we totally understand. We're gonna reach back out to the tier 2 team. But while you're waiting, you should go ahead and make a police report with your local police department and then also call the cybercrime hotline. So I great, thank you, some action items I can take. I'm like neurotic right now, so anything to keep me busy is awesome. So I called the cybercrime hotline, and I went through for about 10 minutes explaining what happened in detail. They gave me a case number, and I said, awesome, what are my next steps? And they said, nothing. Do you know who you're talking to? And I said, I think so. And they explained to me that they were just there to report on metrics about cybercrime, that they weren't there to really support me, and that it isn't normally end users that call in, it's the companies that call in themselves. And I said, okay, well, I guess thanks for a case number, I'll take that. And I took all that information, and then I put in a police report with the Phoenix Police Department. And then the next day, I got an awesome email back from them saying, hey, there's nothing that we can do, good luck. So at this point, I was super frustrated. PayPal wasn't helping me. The police department wasn't helping me. The cybercrimes people were great, but they couldn't help me. And so I didn't know what to do. And back and forth as I'm getting emails from PayPal saying, it's your IP. And I'm saying, I know it's my IP. Please give me my money back. My bank reaches out and I say, hey, your checking account has been overdrafted and we're going to charge you an overdraft fee. And I kind of go into a panic mode because I go, oh no. I've already lost all my money and now they're going to take more from me. So I call up my bank and I explain what happens. And I say, I know you probably can't help me, but is there any way you can waive this fee? And they said, who told you we can't help you? And they started to explain to me a couple of things that I had done accidentally that were going to help me out a lot in the situation. The first was when I took my credit card out, I set it as overdraft protection for my checking account. This was big because all of a sudden it became credit card fraud. And their credit card fraud team, I guess, just loves their job. And so they put in a claim immediately with the credit card fraud department. They credited me back all of that money. They said, if this isn't fraud, we're going to take it back from you, just to understand that. But if we do determine it's fraud, then you're good to go. We've credited you the money. You're going to be great. So that was awesome. I immediately got a refund for a bit over $1,000 there. They had maxed out the card. And then they put in another fraud case for me for the cash and then the rest of the money that made my account negative. This took probably 2 or 3 days to get back, but when they did get back with all the information that I gave them and the transaction history, they determined this is fraud. They sent PayPal a letter. They said, hey, give him his money back. You're going to have to deal with us. And they were more than happy to comply then, and they sent the money back, and I thought I was done. This was great for me because all of this happened about 48 hours before I was on a plane to go to DEF CON, which... if you saw me at DEF CON, I was staring everybody down because I knew that whoever did this was in the room with me. But I thought everything was good. I get back to work the next week. I was finally sleeping well at night. And about Tuesday, I get a phone call, and it's from PayPal. And I go, oh, they're probably calling me to apologize. And so I picked up the phone, and I said, hello? And they said, yeah, this is the claims department. And I was like, okay, that's confusing. Why is this the claims department? Like, why are you calling me? And they said, yeah, so you charged us back all of this money for this claim. And I said, well, I didn't charge it back. My bank did because it was fraud. And I explained to them. And then I pulled up the case numbers and I talked with the person on the phone about these different cases that I had. And they looked at all these cases and they said, yep, this one's fraud, this one's fraud, this one's fraud. And this last one, we don't have closed out yet. And that's what we're calling you about. And I said, okay. So you see these different cases. Yes, okay. You see where the money came from and where it went to. Yes, okay. You see that you marked these as fraud because this person, I didn't know them, and this money went to them, and then it got refunded back. Yes, okay. You see how this one is identical. I do. Awesome. This one's fraud. No, you need to give us the money back. I spent about 45 minutes having that exact same conversation in circles. Ended up hanging up the phone, and I called my bank, and I said, hey, I don't know if you can help me, but this is what's going on. And they said, don't worry, boo, we got you. And they sent another letter to PayPal, and then within, I kid you not, within 45 minutes of getting off the phone with them, PayPal closed that case out, credited me that money, and they sent me like a little apology. So it was, yeah, thank you. So it was a pretty busy week and a half, 2 weeks for me going through all of this. But with sharing all of this, kind of explaining my story, why am I up here? Well, first, it has to do with security awareness, right? Again, I've talked to a lot of people about this, and every single time I have this conversation, they go, oh my goodness, that happened to you? That happened to me too, and I'm super embarrassed about it. And it's not something to be embarrassed about because this happens, right? I definitely could have had better security practices in place personally, but I did everything pretty much right. I scanned it with an antivirus. I paid attention to what I was downloading. I checked it. Everything looked good. I missed one small thing, and then there were layers of security that I had that I didn't fully understand how they worked, right? I would never have expected my PayPal account to auto log in without MFA with a passkey like that. So talking about it definitely helps everybody to kind of understand this threat landscape and bring awareness to it, because the less we talk about it and the more we let them hide in the shadows, the more it's going to happen. 2, security hygiene or modern or traditional security hygiene, I would argue, isn't enough anymore, right? I'm sure you guys have heard the words AI all day today, but as things are evolving, we're getting more sophisticated attacks. The ways that we would traditionally explain to people how to protect themselves, they aren't enough anymore. Again, I've been told since the day when I was 10 years old and I picked up my first laptop that Windows Defender was fine. I remember my dad turning McAfee off on there and saying, you don't need this, you don't need that. Windows Defender is good for 99% of people. And it has been, right, for a long time, but it isn't anymore. And that's not me saying you need to go out and buy an antivirus. There's a lot of awesome free solutions out there, but it's something that we should consider, right? 2, I wasn't away from my computer for more than 30 seconds when this happened. And I'm a security engineer. I know how to respond to these things. I know what to do. And despite that, 2 weeks of my life just disappeared. And that sucks. And it's important to understand in this modern landscape what this can do and what you need to do to respond. Finally, last couple things here. Disaster recovery, when we talk about it in terms of businesses, right? How do you recover VMs? How do you recover data? But it isn't just for businesses, it's for individuals as well. And that's a super important thing for us to understand. How would you know if you were attacked? How would you know how to respond? And how would you recover from that? They're not conversations that I have ever had before this. And they're conversations that I really try and have now with individuals in my life because it's important. Right? You also need to understand with all of that what your attack surface is. I don't, for any sensitive or financial or banking account, save my usernames or passwords anywhere. I will sometimes use passkeys, right? But other than that, I don't use them. And that still happens to me. And it's important for me to understand what accounts that I have, why they're sensitive, what can happen to them, and ways to secure them other than just not writing passwords down, right? And then finally, and this one's a little bit harder to quantify and talk about, but what do your security layers actually do? We set things up. A lot of people have home labs and ways that they monitor their security posture individually, but understanding how your SaaS products work and the security layers there is also super important because for me, all of this could have been prevented if I understood that they would be able to bypass my MFA. I never would have set up a passkey for PayPal if I understood that. So yeah, if you have any questions about this or you have any complaints about what I talked about, you can find me here on LinkedIn. But other than that, thank you guys so much.